This is Pressers by FedNet, where news conferences from the United States Congress become podcast episodes for your listening on your time. Senate Republicans were led by Majority Leader John Thune to discuss the Laken-Riley Act, sponsored by Alabama Senator Katie Britt and Ted Budd of North Carolina on January 14th. Conference leaders from West Virginia and Oklahoma followed them. Thune was asked about confirming President Trump's nominees upon his inauguration a week later in budget reconciliation plans. The following material is protected by copyright.
Good afternoon, everyone. Obviously, border security was a very, very big issue in November's election. And what the American people said is that they clearly want a change in policies when it comes to the issue of securing our border and immigration. The Laken-Riley bill is the beginning of that change. And it is a targeted bill that's designed to deal with a specific issue with respect to the issue of border security and security in our communities. And I commend Senators Katie Britt and Ted Budd for taking a leadership role on this. And frankly, the fact that we got a big vote on it yesterday to get on the bill, I think is a signal that the Democrats perhaps want to play ball. So this is an issue that isn't going to become a comprehensive immigration bill. That's not what this is about. This is a targeted bill. It's focused on a specific issue designed to prevent tragedies like what happened to Laken-Riley and the incredible heartbreak that has caused her family never to happen again. So right now, what we're doing is trying to test whether or not the Democrats want to work with us on an amendment process. But the goal here, the objective is to get this bill across the finish line to deal in a very direct way with a specific border issue, which is the issue of immigration enforcement, and have something that we can put on President Trump's desk that he can sign into law early on in his new administration. So with that, I'm going to yield to Senator Britt and Senator Budd to speak about the bill, and then you'll hear from some of the rest of my colleagues. Senator Britt.
Thank you, Leader Thune. And thank you all for taking time to be here today. Look, we had a big step last week, but there is certainly more to be done. I am excited that some of our Democratic colleagues have heard the American people. There was no more litigated issue than this over the last 4 years, and America spoke loud and clear on November 5th. They want secure borders, they want safe streets, and they want us to actually accomplish something. That's exactly what this bill does. Had this bill been in law, Laken-Riley would still be with us today. As many of you know, she should have celebrated her 23rd birthday last Friday. When we're looking at this, it's not only about her life and legacy, it is about preventing other families from having to go through the tragedy and heartbreak that her family has. It's also a first step in making sure that our nation is more secure, that our children from coast to coast are safe, and that we're actually doing we were actually doing for the American people what we told them we would do. I am hopeful that my Democratic colleagues don't revert back to last year's sentiment when they blocked this bill not just once, but twice. I also want to remind you that in the 118th Congress, the Senate Judiciary Committee that is responsible for marking up these bills did not mark up one bill that was immigration related. So I want to thank Leader Thune, this entire team, thank Senator Budd for getting this on the floor early and getting us an opportunity to actually yield results for the people that we serve. And I hope that my Democratic colleagues make the right choice. This week they have an easy one. It is between the open border policies of the Biden-Harris administration, or they can actually protect American citizens. I think that's an easy choice. Let's do this for Laken, and let's do this for our country. Thank you.
So I want to thank Leader Thune, Senator Britt for working on this, reaching out to our colleagues across the aisle. You could see by the strong vote we've had in these first two procedural votes, their willingness, and I think that's a good day. But we've got more work to do. When it comes to this bill, I speak as a father of three, and two of those are daughters. And I hate that we even have to address this issue, but there's a lot of heartbreak around this. And in the time I've spent going all 100 counties in North Carolina, I hear sheriffs repeatedly echo the same thing to me over and over, and that is every single county in North Carolina is now a border county because of Joe Biden's policies. Now, while this happened in Georgia, we have the same concerns in all the other 49 states, including in North Carolina. This is about preventing tragedies, something that should have never happened before. When you think back to November 5th, it was essentially about two main things, and that is things are unaffordable and that they're unsafe, whether you're thinking internationally or whether you're thinking domestically in your own neighborhood. And it certainly was for Laken Riley, and it forever will be for her family. So this is about preventing tragedies in the future, and any Democrat that doesn't support this, they certainly didn't get the message that America sent loud and clear on November 5th. Thank you.
Well, I look forward to seeing the Laken Riley bill enacted into law with the help of our Democrat colleagues, and I congratulate Senators Budd and Senator Britt for their aggressive but also very sensible and common sense pursuit of this. I just want to say briefly, after our meeting with President Trump last Wednesday, which was very successful, very substantive, and we delivered the message of unity, I think, not only in that room, but to the American people when we came out afterwards and subsequently. On Thursday, I'm going to have Lee Zeldin before the Environment and Public Works Committee. He's a former member of Congress from New York. He is a veteran. He is very well studied, not only in the environmental issues of clean water and clean air, but he also knows how bureaucracies work and how Washington works. So I think we sort of kicked off today with our nominees' hearings with Peach Hegseth, and we will be continuing this, and I look forward to hearing from Lee Zeldin and others. I'm going to hear from Sean Duffy tomorrow over in Commerce, but Lee Zeldin particularly, since I'm the chair of that committee, talking about how we're going to be committed to putting forward President Trump's promise, really, to the American people to make your government work for you, not against you. Thank you.
Senator Britt and Senator Budd, thank you for your leadership on the Laken Riley Act. This is incredibly important because the American people have said over and over again, they just want basic safety. This is about detaining people who've committed additional crimes in the United States. That's pretty common sense to Americans across the country and certainly across my great state. A lot of the conversation we had last week and this week, and we're looking forward to 1 week from today would be President Trump's full first day in office. But the conversation's been about DOGE, it's been about government efficiency. We'll continue to be able to talk about that as we did last week, as we'll continue this week and in the days ahead to try to figure out how to make this government more efficient. I don't meet a single Oklahoman, quite frankly, I don't meet anybody that I run into and says the federal government is the most efficient entity in all the country. Everybody sees areas of efficiency, so we're looking forward to continuing to be able to drive that message and to be able to work towards making our tax dollars actually go to what they should go to.
You have not said much about Pete Hegseth, but now that he's at his hearing, do you have any concerns about these allegations from his past, the sexual assault allegation? And if not, how quickly do you plan to move his nomination to the floor?
I think he's addressed those allegations, and I didn't see all of it. I saw pieces of it, but every report I've had, the readout from the hearing this morning is that he acquitted himself extremely well and made a strong argument for why he ought to be the next Secretary of Defense. If he's reported out of the committee, we will work quickly to get him across the floor, obviously, because that is a key, critical, important national security position that needs to be filled.
What do you think of the timing here? Do you expect to confirm a couple of nominees on Inauguration night? You know, that's been the custom around here, some national security nominees, maybe Rubio because he's well known, maybe Ratcliffe because he's well known. What do you expect on that night or early Tuesday?
Well, first, I mean, we hope that we will have some cooperation to get some of them moved quickly. And obviously, Senator Rubio is a colleague, widely respected on both sides of the political aisle up here. I would hope at least that as he gets through his confirmation hearing, obviously we're not having these conversations in full until they get through the confirmation hearings with the Democrats, but my assumption is at least that on some of these key national security positions that we would have a level of cooperation that would enable us to get some of those positions filled quickly.
After meeting with the President last week to discuss reconciliation, how do you now envision the reconciliation pathway to move forward, given the Laken Riley bill on the floor and the need to fund it? What does that make you think about border security, when that might move? And finally, what is your plan for removing the debt limit later this year?
Obviously, as I've said before, border security is job number one. As has been mentioned, I think it was, if not certainly one of the top two issues coming out of the election, and the American people spoke loudly and clearly. They want us to address that issue, so I'm hopeful that we can move in a reconciliation package on legislation that addresses the border. And how that happens is still up for discussion, negotiation, but clearly the Senate is prepared and ready to move. We continue to have conversations with relevant committees here of jurisdiction to ensure that when the time comes that we can move quickly. And we'll continue to work through the process for all this. One bill, two bills, you know, I don't think you get outside of this city, anybody really cares about that. What they care about is the result.
Minority Leader Chuck Schumer led Democrats to register opposition to the nomination of Pete Hegseth to be Defense Secretary moments after his hearing concluded. Armed Services Committee Chairman Jack Reed, Senators Klobuchar and Whitehouse followed before Schumer fielded questions.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for waiting. Sorry to be late. These early caucuses, we're taking a lot of time to discuss all the great issues. But I want to thank Senators Reed, Klobuchar, and Whitehouse for joining us. It's a busy week. Senate Democrats remain focused on President Trump's cabinet hearings starting today with the hearing of Pete Hegseth to be Secretary of Defense. If today's hearing is a sense of what's to come, we are deeply concerned. It's no secret Mr. Hegseth has some incredibly troubling allegations against him. He is, by all accounts, woefully unfit to be Secretary of Defense. So much so that my colleague Senator Reed requested to allow all committee members to review all FBI background documents. Chairman Wicker said no. What's he afraid of? What are they afraid of? If Mr. Hegseth had nothing to hide, and if Republicans do indeed think he's qualified and ready for one of the most consequential jobs in the country, why is the chairman hell-bent to keep all relevant information out of the hands of his colleagues? To dismiss the allegations against Mr. Hegseth, but then reject full transparency is at best odd, suspicious, concerning at worst. Unfortunately, Mr. Hegseth's testimony failed to address the disturbing questions that plague his nomination. So, it appears that Mr. Hegseth's strategy is to follow the 5 Ds of dodgeball: dodge, duck, dip, dive, and dodge. That's his strategy. See the movie? Mr. Hegseth failed to explain, for one, why someone with his lack of qualifications should be entrusted to lead our armed forces. Why should America entrust our military to a television personality who has never led any large organization? No answer. Mr. Hegseth failed to answer for his deeply flawed history of financial and organizational mismanagement. Why should he be the one entrusted to manage the huge, complicated Pentagon's budget when he couldn't even do well with much tinier organizations? No good answer. When asked about his comments as recently as 2 months ago, when he claimed that we should not have women in combat roles, he had no good answers. Being Secretary of Defense demands discipline, it demands character, it demands restraint. Mr. Hegseth's history shows he's deficient in every one of these qualities. And without any documentation to prove otherwise, it would be deeply irresponsible for the Senate to confirm him as Secretary of Defense. It's a risk that our 3 million military and civilian defense workers cannot take. But of course, Mr. Hegseth isn't the only nominee we're concerned with. We want to make sure these nominees, we say to the American people, we want to make sure these nominees are fighting for you and your family. We want them working day in and day out to make our country safer, bring costs down, and make life easier for all Americans. That's what Senate Democrats are focused on throughout these hearings, and you'll see us continually focusing on these and what we'll fight for in the hearings. Senator Reed's just gotten back from the hearing with Senator Hegseth.
Well, thank you, Leader. I went into this hearing with deep concerns about Mr. Hegseth's qualifications to be Secretary of Defense, and I have concluded that he lacks the character, the competence, and the commitment to do this job. He's probably the least qualified individual ever suggested to be the Secretary of Defense in my tenure and perhaps in the history of the country. But there's something I think more fundamental that is taking place. Hegseth will be the point person on the politicization of the United States military. We have never had a politicized military. Over the course of my life, I learned at West Point that our duty is to the Constitution, and it's not to be a partisan. What Mr. Hegseth wants to do is insert partisanship into the military of the United States so it becomes a political vehicle. One of the first things they want to do is have their warrior board. I suspect President Trump will announce that on January 20th. And what that warrior board will do is identify everyone they consider to be at the general officer level not compliant with Trump, i.e. not a sycophant. And they will eliminate them. And that will send huge impulses throughout the entire military about what does it mean to be a soldier, sailor, Marine, airman, guardian today. It will also give people pause about how they behave. Should they give their best professional opinion, or should they keep quiet because it might offend the President or the Secretary of Defense, and they would be subject to a warrior board? They have already sent out anonymous emails to active duty officers saying, we're going to get you. We're going to get you. That is completely contrary to any of the traditions of the military of the United States. So we are in a very difficult position. And it's further complicated by the fact that there is an ongoing campaign of intimidation against people who would come forward and testify, and also, I believe, my colleagues. There are advertisements in their states now that they must vote for Hegseth, and there is clear sort of signals that if you don't play ball, you're going to have millions and millions of dollars directed against you, as well as social media directed against you to make your life miserable. And ultimately, this will come down to whether the Senate of the United States can perform its constitutional duty to advise and consent to the President of the United States, not to simply fall in line and do something expedient. So the Senate's reputation is at stake. The military of the United States is at stake. We are in for a very difficult moment.
Thank you. Thank you. Over the next few weeks, as you all know, in the next few months, the Senate is going to be carrying out our constitutional duty, as Senator Reid just described, of advise and consent when we consider these nominees. And I want to thank Senator Schumer for his leadership in pushing for those FBI background checks and for the ethics forms, the conflicts forms. As you know, a number of hearings have been held off because people did not get those forms in, didn't give us that necessary information for us and for the public for us to look at. And just stepping back from the very important Hegseth hearing today, there are the upcoming nominees and our focus on what matters to the American people. So when we look at these nominees, we're going to look at whether they're able, whether they have the background, whether they have the ethical background, but also whether what they do actually is consistent with what the American people need and want. When we look at reconciliation or whatever they're going to do after that, we are happy to work with the Republicans on bringing down the cost of housing and bringing down the cost of child care and medical care and, of course, long-term care, something we don't talk enough about, but not if they're actually going to make that worse by giving a bunch of tax cuts to the wealthiest. We'll be looking at whether they are prepared to actually improve the lives of the American people. Will they commit to continuing the prescription drug negotiations that were such hard-fought negotiations in Congress and then sent over and administered by Secretary Becerra and President Biden? First 10 drugs alone will save 9 million seniors $1.5 billion in out-of-pocket costs in just 1 year. Are they going to continue those negotiations? Are they going to continue into next year as 15 more drugs, and the year after that 15 more drugs with billions and billions of dollars at stake? Or are they going to give Big Pharma a sweetheart deal? These are the questions we're going to be asking the nominees. Are they going to commit to letting Americans keep more of what they earn when they have children, when they have families, as in the child tax credit? Or will they give billionaires and corporations a massive tax break that would add trillions to the national debt? And I would note that the Treasury Department study released Friday found that extending the tax cuts for people who make more than $400,000 a year would cost $2.4 trillion, and that would give the top 0.1% a tax cut of $314,000 a year. So if they are willing to work with us on what matters for regular people to bring down costs, we're there. But if they're messing around with giving a bunch of things to the wealthy, we're going to hold them accountable. Thank you.
Thanks, Amy. Senator Whitehouse.
Thank you, Chuck. With this slate of nominees, the doors are creaking open to political partisanship and special interest control over the levers of government. The American people need to watch their wallets with this crew of Trump nominees who are out to loot our public treasury and pollute our public spaces. Trump and his billionaire buddies are out to get richer still at everyone else's expense, at the expense of working families, the planet, and our collective future. So Democrats in these hearings are going to press for answers about shady business dealing, dark money corruption, special interest influence. Remember, for instance, Donald Trump's brazen pitch to the fossil fuel industry, $1 billion for his presidential campaign in return for lucrative fossil fuel favors. Trump's big donors want payback. The nominees are here to deliver, and regular people will pay the price. I'll close with the warning we've pressed through the Budget Committee that we are headed into an insurance crisis driven by fossil fuel emissions with huge stakes for the American economy, and we need to avoid that crash, not put government into the control of the special interests who have been causing it.
Thank you. Questions? Yes.
Will you and your caucus support the Lake and Riley Act if there are no changes to it?
Look, we are working hard to get amendments to improve the act, and we're discussing that with Senator Thune right now. Yes?
Are there any must-pass amendments for Democrats?
We're working, as I said, with Senator Thune to get amendments to improve the bill. Yes?
Which parts of the bill do you think are most important to get
As I said, all I'm going to say to you again is we're working with Senator Thune to get some amendments to the bill. We're very hopeful that we can get some. Yes?
What do you think is an appropriate timetable to confirm some of these nominees? I know you say you don't want to rush through these here. Obviously, they want to get some of these done, but what would you, give us some specific...
Look, every nominee should at least go through three things. One, the FBI background check investigation should be made available to all of the committee members and to the public.
Thanks for listening to this FedNet podcast, and be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. This program is copyrighted by Federal Network, Incorporated, and provided only for informational and educational purposes. The unauthorized reproduction, distribution, or use of this episode without expressed written permission from FedNet is prohibited. Stay tuned to our YouTube channel at FedNet for live streams as the confirmation process unfolds on the floor.